after Ferrari is once again at the centre of a major Formula One storm. A heated drama has exploded to the surface after Lewis Hamilton's relationship with his Ferrari race engineer reportedly experienced a tumultuous problem that has the potential to shake Ferrari's ambitious project for the 2026 season. Is this ordinary internal friction, or a ticking time bomb that could alter Ferrari's future and Hamilton's career at Maranello? Let's discuss it. Ferrari has finally publicly acknowledged something that has only been vaguely discussed in the Formula One paddock. The team's latest decision regarding Hamilton's race engineer is not just about the person behind the radio. Rather, it's an acknowledgement that the relationship between driver and race engineer is a crucial performance variable that can determine the future of the project. Fred Vasseur's statement that all options are being evaluated marks a shift in Ferrari's perspective. For the first time, the Maranello team has admitted that Hamilton's communication issues this season were not a temporary hiccup, but part of a structural problem that must be resolved before the 2026 regulation era begins. Lewis Hamilton's arrival at Ferrari was never expected to be easy. However, Ferrari now admits to a major mistake. They underestimated the extent of the adaptation required for a 7-time world champion who had spent over a decade working within Mercedes' highly efficient and integrated system. Vasseur implicitly acknowledges that the accumulation of small losses due to communication asymmetries has had a significant impact. In modern Formula One, where tenths of a second can determine starting positions, even minor errors in timing information, communication style, or decision-making structure can result in a loss of confidence and consistent performance. Hamilton joined Ferrari not as a development driver but as a performance benchmark, so when the system around him didn't provide the fluidity he needed, problems arose. The transition from Mercedes, which is often considered the gold standard for driver-engineer communication, to Ferrari's procedural system quickly revealed issues. Ferrari no longer views this as an adjustment period, but rather as a structural issue that must be seriously addressed. Karan Chandok's analysis clarifies this issue. He compares Hamilton's predictive and intuitive relationship with Peter Bonington at Mercedes with the reactive, corrective, and sometimes belated dynamic between Hamilton and Riccardo Adami at Ferrari. Chandok emphasised that the issue wasn't Adami's competence, but rather the compatibility of his communication style with Hamilton's cognitive processes under extreme pressure. Throughout the 2025 season, Ferrari's radio communications repeatedly demonstrated this incompatibility. Hamilton's frustration rarely stemmed from the content of the radio messages, but from how and when the information was delivered. Layered confirmations that might have suited other drivers disrupted his rhythm, and communication breaks at crucial moments created an intolerable level of uncertainty. This wasn't an emotional reaction, but an operational preference formed over decades of racing at the highest level. Vasseur's example of Budapest was particularly eye-opening. A tenth of a second in qualifying could have major consequences for the race's outcome. At this point, Ferrari realised they could no longer tolerate inefficiencies in the driver-engineer interface. Amid intense scrutiny of Ferrari's radio communications, Riccardo Adami finally offered an insider's perspective. The race engineer emphasised that the situation wasn't a personal conflict, but rather an alignment process at a high level that is rarely seen in public. Adami said that working with Lewis Hamilton requires adhering to very specific and precise communication standards. Hamilton processes information differently. Our job is not just to provide data, Adami said, but to ensure that it arrives at the right moment and in the right structure. Adami emphasised that much of the stiff or overly procedural radio chatter actually stemmed from Ferrari's long-established work system. When Hamilton arrived with more intuitive and predictive communication habits, friction was inevitable. Ferrari has a strong operational structure, but Hamilton came from a highly streamlined environment. Bringing the two worlds together takes time and honesty, Adami continued. We're learning from each other. There's no resistance or defensiveness. Instead, there's a desire to grow. Interestingly, Vasseur didn't view this situation as an individual failure. He emphasised the underestimation of the learning curve in complex organisational transitions. He cited differences in work culture, internal systems, and old habits as key factors. In other words, Ferrari now recognizes that integrating a driver from a highly optimized Mercedes structure requires more than technical adaptation. It requires re-evaluating how information flows, how decisions are made under pressure, and how roles around the driver are defined. This approach is significant given that Ferrari has often been defensive of criticism in the past. This time, Vasseur is using input from Hamilton, analysts, and internal evaluations as diagnostic tools. The timing of this recognition is crucial. The 2026 regulations will present far more complex operational challenges, including active aerodynamic modes, more complex energy management, and reduced aerodynamic loads. These changes narrow the margin for error and increase the cost of any doubt or ambiguity. In this context, radio communication is not just an operational detail, but a key performance system. Any inconsistency that was tolerable in 2025 could result in lost time, tyre degradation, or strategic errors in 2026. Ferrari seems to realise that allowing even one link in this chain to become suboptimal would undermine their entire technical ambition. Peter Bonington's absence, caused by a non-poaching clause, highlights the enormity of Hamilton's loss. Hamilton is not just changing teams, he is losing an operational partner who has been an extension of his decision-making process for over a decade. Ferrari must now choose whether to wait for a similar bond to form naturally or to accelerate the process through structural changes, such as hiring new engineers, revising communication protocols, or redistributing responsibilities. Vasseur's willingness to consider all options demonstrates Ferrari's understanding that trust at this level often requires decisive action, not just patience. The alignment of vision between Ferrari management and Hamilton is increasingly clear. Hamilton himself has emphasised that improvements come not only from aerodynamics or the engine, but also from efficiency, coordination, and timing across the entire support network. The fact that Ferrari is willing to restructure its operations around Hamilton signals that this is not a short-term project. The team wouldn't rebuild its human resources system around a temporary driver. All signs point to Hamilton as Ferrari's primary reference point in the major 2026 reset. Ultimately, Ferrari's decision extends well beyond a change in radio voice. It's a strategic acknowledgement that elite performance hinges on clarity, trust, and operational cohesion factors that are just as important as aerodynamics and power unit architecture. If Ferrari can create an environment that allows Hamilton to act on his instincts amid the extreme complexity of the new regulations, then the combination of an optimal human resources structure and a clean slate for 2026 could alter Hamilton's trajectory with Ferrari entirely. Will Ferrari make major changes for Lewis Hamilton? Or will this communication problem hinder the 2026 project? Share your thoughts below